Hello, Dr. Kit Slies here, psychologist and life coach, here to inspire your confidence, self-compassion, and growth. And I've been talking a lot about shame and the antidote to shame. And today I wanted to talk about parts of self-work as another way to work with shame. And I mean, parts of self can do so many things for us. Different practitioners might approach parts of self-work a little bit differently. So I'll just tell you a little bit about how I view parts of self. And in particular, I want to talk today about how to deal with a part of ourself that a lot of us might call our inner critic as a way of working with shame. So parts of self-work is um, when we're doing that work, it's really understanding this notion that we all have different parts or aspects of who we are as a person. You can think of them as different parts of your personality or whatever it is, but there's just different sides of us that can come out in different ways. So we might have like a critic or a judge or the party person part, the funny part, the jokester. We might have a part of ourself that sabotages things for us. We might have a part of us that's very childlike and wonderfully naive and is able to be open to new experience. So there's different sort of characters that play a part in our psyche, if you will. So some parts of self-work is a little bit prescriptive and will name those parts for you. For me personally, and for the work that I do with my clients, I like to have us name or really identify what part is coming out for us in different times. Sometimes for myself, though, and with clients, we will think about sort of archetypal ideas about who the parts that are at play are coming through. And so the idea with parts of self is that it's normal to have all these different parts. It is normal and healthy to have different parts of yourself. We might experience discomfort, distress, dysfunction when we are not accepting of the parts that are within us, or if they are coming out in ways that we are judging or having a hard time with, and we might be cutting off that part from ourselves in a way, sort of not acknowledging that that part is really coming through or wanting that part to come through. That's where shame can come in, because if we are cutting that part off, judging that part, feeling badly about that part, we're really saying that that is something bad about who we are, a part of ourselves, because that part of you is a part of you, right? And so the inner critic is often what's coming through when we want to, when we're feeling shame or feeling badly about a part of ourselves. There's other parts of ourselves that may be relevant for you. Judge is another one that comes to my mind, somebody who's sort of judging ourselves. There could be, we might have like an internal judge. So the whole goal of parts of ourselves is to acknowledge all the parts so they can be integrated as a whole and be accepting of the parts so that our core true inner self is the one calling the shots, and we are able to use these parts of ourselves, these inherent parts of ourselves who are already there. We're able to really leverage them to our benefit. So let me use the example again of the inner critic. The inner critic might be a part of ourself that criticizes the things that we do. Oh, so for example, okay, I can't believe that you did that thing or said that thing. What were you even thinking? Are you stupid? Like that kind of thing. That's what an inner critic might sound like if I was in my mind using self-talk with myself. The inner critic might do other things as well. It might be, your inner critic critiques things around you. Your inner critic might come out as a projection onto other people. You might be criticizing other people around you. But really, oftentimes, that's just a projection of how we criticize ourselves to try to be better, right? So that can cause disruption in relationships and then can lead to shame if you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was so hard on so and so, or if you're getting into discord in a relationship as a result of your inner critic coming out as a projection. Your inner critic can come out in other ways too. Your inner critic can critique things that you do in your life, whether it's with work and, oh, why don't you work harder? Why don't you work better? Why don't you do this? Your inner critic can come out in perfectionistic ways where you're really going over and over again some work that you've done, making sure that it's really perfect or something along the lines of that. Okay, so inner critic can come out in all these ways that feel very difficult. But the other thing that's important to keep in mind, and this is where working with the shame comes in, the thing about our inner critic is that the inner critic usually exists because we want to be better in some way. And your inner critic can actually be good at helping you be better when you are inviting it in. So critique is an important thing. So I went to, before I became a psychologist, I did art school. And that was one of the things that we did pretty much every week in every class was a critique, where you bring, this art piece, which as an artist is usually some representation of your heart and soul, an outpouring of your heart and soul, right? And you put it up in front of class and you all critique it. What could be better about that piece? And boy, when you first start it, it is heart-wrenching to hear about how your heart and soul that you're pouring out into this room full of people is not good enough. Right? But that process allows artists to refine their craft. And the thing to keep in mind about a critique is it's like you get to take the critiques from your colleagues and you get to pick and choose which ones you want to integrate into your next art piece, and use that as a way to improve yourself. And the critiques that you feel like don't fit or that you don't resonate with, you get to leave those beside. Thank you so much for your critique. I appreciate your perspective, and I'm going to leave that one at the door, right? So it's the same thing with our inner critic, is that its intention is to help us grow or do better in some way. When we can name this part of ourselves and recognize it when he or she is coming through, when your inner critic is coming through, we can say, oh, that's my inner critic. And my inner critic here exists to help me do better. That's when we get to either accept the critique at that moment and incorporate it in a positive way. Oh, thank you so much, inner critic, for reminding me that I want to do this thing better. And I feel like that I can actually apply that feedback right now. Thanks, inner critic. Or, you know what, inner critic, I know you're always going because that's your role. That's your job, inner critic. You're always critiquing. You're always thinking of, what can be done better. But actually, inner critic, I don't need you in this moment. I feel pretty confident about what I'm doing in this moment. Inner critic, why don't you go, hey, there's this other problem that I've been thinking about, inner critic, that's been on my mind. Why don't you go into the background somewhere and solve that in the depths of my subconscious while I'm focusing on this other thing that is actually doing just fine. I don't need you right now in this moment, inner critic. So these are the options of responding to our inner critic that can perpetuate growth, self-confidence, and self-compassion, as opposed to leading to shame when we are self-criticizing or self-critiquing. So that's one way that you can work with parts of self, and you can do this with all the parts of yourself that you identify. What we do is we identify the strengths, how that part of ourself serves us in some way, and then we have grace for when that part of self is showing up at a time when we don't really need or want them there. Being aware of what the parts of ourselves are and acknowledging them and having that dialogue with them is what allows us to orchestrate them in a way so that they are all working together to serve you as a whole, integrated, healthy human being. So Please, I hope that you can use this to maybe think about what the parts of yourself are that come through at different times, whether it's within different relationships, different aspects of your life. Identify the strengths and the parts that you want to cultivate. Identify when those parts are coming up and are leading to distress or shame, and learning how to say, no, thank you. I don't need you in this moment, but here are some other times or other areas where I do need you, so that these parts of selves can feel integrated and healthy and whole for you. I hope that this was helpful in thinking about parts of self and your inner critic, and just as another way to work with shame or any kind of distressing emotions or uncomfortable emotions that might come up for you. And have a great week. Until next time, see you then. Bye-bye.